testimony from all 4 of my dad's adult children. Interview all of us, talk to all of us, not publicly interview, but have private conversations. I can give you my siblings' phone numbers. You can call them. You can ask them the tough questions, and you can then make your decision based on those.
What information are they going to tell me, John, that I don't know?
So you're saying you know that he beat his wife with spousal punishment?
I asked him the questions that I needed to ask, and he answered them truthfully, and it doesn't contradict anything you're saying.
The following video is a recording of a conversation between myself and Pastor Shelley that took place on the phone last Friday, September 20th, the day after Pastor Shelley released an episode of his podcast, The Baptist Bias, addressing the situation with my dad, Pastor Stephen Anderson, and the allegations of child abuse and spousal abuse made against him. During this conversation, Pastor Shelley was not aware that he was being recorded and therefore spoke a lot more freely. Pastor Shelley gives his opinion on whether or not he thinks my dad actually did the things he was accused of, what my dad told him in personal conversation, his opinions on whether or not spousal abuse, or as he likes to call it, spousal corporal punishment, is wrong, and whether or not it is wrong for a pastor to mislead his church members. Some of the things said in this video contradict what Pastor Shelley said in his public video. Large portions of this conversation have been edited out. Our full conversation was over an hour long, and most of it was just Pastor Shelley sort of yapping and avoiding questions. For those of you who are interested in hearing the full conversation, I can release that as well, but this is edited down to the necessary parts for those of you who don't have time to watch over an hour of him just talking.
This is Pastor Shelley.
Hey, Pastor Shelley, it's John. You messaged me yesterday and said you wanted to, talk about the whole situation, or hear my side, or did you have any questions, or what exactly were you wanting to talk about?
Well, I've talked with your parents about the situation, and I made a public video about the situation. I don't know if you saw that or not, but
someone sent it to me, but I didn't watch it yet.
Really, I was willing to talk with you, in an effort to just try to encourage you to, maybe seek some reconciliation with your parents.
Right, and I'm completely.
I don't really have an agenda or anything like that.
I'm completely open to reconciliation. So kind of the thing that happened that now makes me think reconciliation isn't possible is the fact that my dad, in a meeting with his church members, and my mom has said publicly, my dad hasn't said anything about it, but my mom publicly said online, my dad in a meeting with his church members said, I have never hit my wife. I've never physically laid hands on her, which is something that is blatantly not true, because I saw him beat her on a regular basis for years. That's something my other siblings can attest to. You can ask any of them. And I think that now, if he wants to reconcile with me, right, he would have to apologize for publicly calling me a liar for saying those things, which would then involve him admitting that he did those things, which would then, in a way, really ruin his ministry. And I think that the fact that he was willing to blatantly lie to his own congregation shows that at this point, he's kind of just not wanting to let go of his ministry. Because I understand emotions.
Let me ask you the questions here, because, in any controversy, it's important to kind of identify what we're talking about.
For sure.
I just want to know, from your perspective, are you saying that you witnessed your dad with a closed fist punch your mom, and you saw that?
No, I don't. I never said that. He slapped
her.
No,
I'm just.
No,
I just want to know, because
he never closed fist punched her.
I have spoken with your dad about his, some intimate details and some embarrassing things, frankly speaking. He told me that he's never closed fist hit your mom.
He's never closed fist hit my mom that I saw. I don't think he ever did. What I said is that he physically beat her with an electrical cord, which is something he lied to his church and said he did not do.
Well, here's the thing. According to him and talking with him, he told the church that he did not close fist punch your mom.
Did he admit to you that he beat her with the electrical cord?
Well, here's the thing. I asked him if he used physical discipline on your mom.
Okay.
And he told me that whatever he had done between him and your mom was consensual, and that it was behind closed doors, and that whatever his kids were aware of or heard were probably even an exaggeration of what happened. But again,
so I saw the physical. I've seen the bloody marks on my mom, the same bloody marks that I had on me, and it's not really consensual when somebody's.
And here's the thing. According to your mom's testimony and your dad's testimony, those things were consensual between them. So
but they've misled church members, because every church member that I've heard from is saying your dad is saying he never hit your mom, and that's what I keep hearing.
So we have to ask what that means.
Right. But hitting somebody with an electrical cord is hitting somebody. I've been punched. I've been hit with an electrical cord. The electrical cord is a lot more painful. I never said my dad didn't punch my mom. So either way, even if he thinks he's technically telling the truth, he is misleading his church members.
Well, again, I wasn't there at that specific meeting. I'm assuming you weren't either. Strangely enough, I had a long doctrinal conversation with your dad weeks before you came out with your video, and we discussed the idea of spousal discipline in the context of like spanking your wife or whatever. Just because I've literally had people come up to me in my church and ask me that question.
And what was the nature of that discussion? Like, what were his thoughts? What were your thoughts? Like, what was the conclusion of that?
This is the conversation that I had with him before any of this came out. Okay?
Right.
And I said, well, here's my opinion on the subject: is that obviously the Bible is kind of silent. It doesn't really seem to go positive or negative. And I think that while I would personally never do that we can't condemn it. Because, first of all, in America, that was legal for hundreds of years and exercised by many people regularly.
Being gay is legal in America right now, and you don't think that's okay? I mean, you can't.
Sure, I'm just saying contextually, like, many people have been Christians and believe that was okay. But I think that today's culture is so hypersensitive in this area, and I think because women have such an easy way to divorce their husbands and use that kind of a situation against them, that I think it would be unwise to do something, because then someone can be misleading or take these things out of context and try to use them against the husband, even though he wasn't necessarily trying to just literally beat up his wife or something. Like, I counsel couples all the time, and there are men that are literally beating the shit out of their wives.
Right.
And I know what that's like. I've seen that.
Those electrical cord beatings are pretty bad, man. I got a lot of them. They hurt really, really bad. I have been in fights where I got hit with a closed fist, and I have been hit with an electrical cord. The electrical cord is much, much more painful. To this day, that is one of the most painful things I've ever experienced. And
yeah, but
I have seen my dad strike my mom, because I've seen him slap her in the face. He slapped her in the face before, and I have seen that.
Well, here's the thing, John.
I saw him grab her, throw her, and slam her head into a cabinet. Like, I never saw him closed fist punch her, but he has physically assaulted her a bunch of other times, a bunch of different ways. So for him to say, I've never hit my wife, is a blatant lie. if
Well,
you hit
it
somebody,
depends on the context.
if you
It
hit
depends on the
somebody with an
context on which you
I will look up the dictionary definition of the word hit then.
Yeah, but it depends on the context. If the context is, and what most people think, and I'm just trying to be honest with you, if most people said he hit her, they're thinking it's a punch. I'm just saying, like, that's what you typically think of.
But
okay?
He's not being honest. He's not being honest. And the pastor should be honest with their church members. Don't you agree with that?
Of course.
So for him, so if spousal abuse, if he doesn't think that spousal abuse disqualifies him, if he thinks that spousal abuse is okay, then why lie to your church members? And if he knows what he's doing isn't okay, and then lies to his church members anyway, that is a wicked wrong thing. Whatever semantics you want to play about the word hit, we can both agree he admitted to you, and I've seen it happen, he has physically hit her. He has physically struck her. With a closed fist? No. Maybe he did punch her, that I didn't see. All I can speak to what I've seen, that I have seen him hit her with an electrical cord more times than I can count, and slap her in the face a handful of times, and also at one point slam her head into a cabinet. Also, my mom, she's saying it's consensual. Now, you really can't consent when you're physically having that forced on you. And I know that last year my mom wanted to press charges on my dad and divorce him. She didn't do it because eventually she realized that, number one, none of her kids would testify against my dad without also testifying against her, and number two, she could not financially support 12 kids. So, but all of my siblings, my 5 oldest siblings, me, Solomon, Isaac, Miriam, and Rebecca, my mom had separate conversations with all of us, basically saying, your dad is wrong, your dad's evil, your dad's bad, he's abusive, and I want to leave him. Will you testify in court against your dad? And all of us told my mom the same thing. We won't testify in court against dad without testifying against you as well, because she wanted us to testify against him for child abuse. Because she wanted to get him in trouble for domestic abuse, so she wanted us to witness to the fact that he abused her, but then also she didn't want him to have any way of seeing the kids. She wanted him to completely lose custody, so she wanted us to testify against him for child abuse. So we were all like, no, we're not going to testify and say dad abused us and not you, because you were abusing us as much or more our entire childhood, right? Also, with the whole, aside from the spousal thing, the whole child thing, the Bible talks about spanking as a punishment. Spanking was not just used as a punishment in my house. It happened frequently that kids were beaten. Little kids were beaten into confessing to things and beaten as part of interrogations. That's like against the Geneva Convention, right? That's not punishment. That is never permitted in the Bible. And also, kids would get beaten, not really by my dad, but by my mom very frequently, where a kid wouldn't even be doing anything wrong. My mom would be angry or frustrated about something else, just grab the nearest kid to her and start hitting them. There isn't really a standard set forth in the Bible of where exactly to draw the line of what makes something child abuse. But beating a 7-8-year-old kid with an extension cord all over their body, right? It wasn't just on the buttocks, it was all over their body. And when they're laying on the ground, screaming, writhing, begging for mercy, and you keep beating them as a way, they didn't even do anything wrong, as a way to try to get them to admit to doing something. And my parents would beat multiple kids until one of them admitted to doing something. So if there were multiple kids they thought could have done something, they'd keep beating them all until one of them admitted to it. That is, I think any reasonable person can agree that that is not right. Number one. Number two, my dad was beating my mom with an electrical cord for years. And for him to say he did not hit her is a lie. Her, which everybody who was at that meeting has told me, your dad said he never hit her mom. So are they all lying when they're all saying he said he never hit her? Because hitting somebody with an electrical cord, striking somebody with an electrical cord is still hitting somebody by the definition of that word. And if
but you're just.
So what's he saying he did to her then? What's he telling you he did?
Context. And
but
you're
the context.
You're
I never said
repeating
he punched
what
her.
other people said.
I never said he punched her in my interview. So why would that be the accusation? Why would he think that's what we're referring to? I never accused him of punching her because I never saw him punch her.
You did at least insinuate that. I'd have to go and listen back to the exact wording.
I don't think I did, because I've never seen my dad punch her. I think it's very likely he punched her at some point, but I never saw that. I only ever saw him slap her with an open hand, hit her head into a cabinet once, and beat her with an electrical cord numerous times. So what is he telling you he did to her then? When he describes what he did to her to you, what word does he use if he doesn't say the word hit? What word does he use to describe it?
Again, like I said, he told me that he's never closed fist punched your mom, and he said that whatever spousal discipline may or may not have occurred was consensual. And I'm not going to pry into that, because here's the thing, John. I'm not going to disqualify a pastor because he exercises spousal discipline. While I personally disagree with that, and I'm not saying that I would encourage that, and I think that it's an unwise thing to do, it's not out of the realm of what the Bible says, because the Bible's silent on that issue.
One of the qualifications for being a pastor, well, two qualifications, is it says not a striker, right?
Sure.
And if every time his wife upsets him, his response is to strike her, then he's in violation of that qualification, number one. Number two, ruling well your own house. Do you think that if he's the man of the home, he's supposed to be ruling the home, and he is ruling the home by physically assaulting his wife? Do you think that is considered ruling well? Do you think that is doing a good job? Do you consider beating your wife to get her to, because you're upset at her, do you consider that to be ruling well your own home? Because I'll tell you right now, Pastor, my mom does not respect my dad whatsoever. My dad is not in control in his home whatsoever, because you can never beat somebody into complete submission. What does the Bible say about a wise word entering, about like a word entering into a wise man and 100 stripes into a fool? You cannot beat somebody into subjection completely. My dad is not in control in the home. My mom is in control of the home. And despite all of the physical abuse my dad was carrying out on my mom, she still never respected him, still never listened to him, still never obeyed him, still told her kids that she hates him. My mom has told me she hates my dad a bunch of times. She's told me and my siblings that she prays he'll die so she can get the life insurance.
Every woman is irrational, and every woman runs her mouth, and every woman says the dumbest crap. The Bible says, husbands, love your wives and be not bitter against them. Why would the Bible tell husbands to not be bitter against their wives if they weren't constantly going against them and screwing up? Why is it that the Bible says a virtuous woman...
Maybe because you just shouldn't be bitter to your wife either way, and there are guys that would be bitter to their wife either way.
The guys aren't getting bitter at their wives because they're being perfect. Look, the perfect woman just doesn't exist, John, number one.
Well, because the perfect person doesn't exist. There isn't a perfect man either. Dad is lying to his congregation, though.
He's not lying to his congregation, John.
He is saying he did not hit his wife when he has admitted to you that he hit her, and I have seen him hit her. And to say, oh, the context means he was punching her? No, there was no context about punching her, because nobody accused him of punching her. He was accused of doing spousal discipline the same way he disciplined his kids. So for him to say, I did not hit my wife because I meant I didn't punch her, is a blatant lie.
Okay, but let me ask you this, John.
What?
Because I want you to be reasonable with me for a second. Let's just say, hypothetically, let's just say your dad said, you know what, I exercised what is in my mind spousal discipline on my wife with an electrical cord, and then the whole church says, okay, we still want you to be our pastor. Is that going to suffice you? Because it doesn't seem like you care.
Yeah. Then if his whole church still wants him to pastor after that, then okay. All I'm saying, all my point is that his church should know the type of person he is, and he should be transparent. The problem is he's deceiving his church members. And he needs to be open with his church members. And for him to say, I've never hit my wife, is a blatant lie.
you and I both know.
Do you
that
honestly believe he never exercised physical spousal discipline? Did he admit that to you? Or did he lie to you as well?
He did not directly state anything. All I asked him, I said, did you exercise physical discipline on your wife? And he said, and anything that I did was consensual. That's
him saying yes. That's him
look,
strongly implying
look,
that
John,
he did.
I understand. But here's the thing. That doesn't bother me.
Okay.
And I'm not saying like I agree with it. I hope you don't misunderstand
what I'm saying. Then don't be bothered by it. That's okay. But his church members, the people, everyone I've spoken to in his church that have heard the allegations and are staying in his church, they are staying because they believe him that everything I said is a lie. If there are a bunch of people, I'm sure there are a lot of people in church, because he has a lot of bad, weird people in his church that I think would hear that, oh, he beats his wife and be like, yeah, that's completely okay. I approve of spousal discipline. But he needs to be open and transparent about that, because there are a lot of people in his church that are not, that is not clear to them. They have been deceived by him. And the only reason they're staying in his church is because he's deceived them. And he is, as a pastor, deceiving his church members, and that is always wrong. And you can ask any of my other 3 siblings that don't live with my dad. All of us, me and my other 3 siblings, we are all very different. We all have very different views, opinions, etc. And on subjective small issues, we all disagree. But all of us, all 4, can agree on the big issue that, yes, my dad was beating his wife with an electrical cord on multiple times a week on a regular basis for a span of about 3 or 4 years.
And look, I understand. Look, I'm not disputing that, and I could tell. Look, I listened to your interview, and I could tell that I can tell sincerity. Okay. Right. Well, I think that, again, I've spoken with your dad.
I'm not talking about what he told you. I'm sure he was very open and honest with you because you are a close friend of his. But when he was his public thing, he was deceiving his congregation intentionally. He intentionally deceived his congregation, and that, as a pastor, never is acceptable.
Well, I think that look, John, as a pastor, it's important to be honest and clear with your congregation, but it's also not necessarily edifying or beneficial to disclose every minute detail.
But when people are coming to him and saying, hey, we heard you did this, we don't think you're qualified if you did this, what's your response? And he goes, yeah, I never did that. You can't give consent under duress.
Yes, but you can say,
under duress,
you can have a conversation with your wife.
When threatened and unsafe, you cannot give consent.
So you can have a conversation with your wife and say, I believe in spousal discipline. Whenever I am upset with something you did, or if you do these violations, I'm gonna discipline you this way. And she says, I think that that's fair. John, let me ask you this question, okay?
Okay.
Someone had accused me of beating up my son and breaking his legs, which was complete lie. That's never happened. I've never even hurt my kids like that.
Right.
If CPS or anybody came and they said, have you hit your kids? I would say no. But here's the thing. I have spanked my kids with a paddle and with a belt. Okay. Is I lying by saying I have not hit them?
Yeah. That is lying to say you've never hit your kid. How is that not lying?
Because, again, I think that you're just not being fair with the questioning. Because what if a public executioner, someone says, like, have you ever killed anybody? And they say no, but they've technically executed people.
So he was never accused of punching her. He was accused of spousal discipline with an electrical power cord.
Well, look, I asked him if he used an electrical cord on his children. He told me yes.
Okay.
I asked him if he practiced spousal discipline, and again, I already told you what he said. Here's the thing: he was very honest with me. I believe that if he had told his church that, his church would have still wanted him to be the pastor.
Then he needs to tell his church that and let them decide. You're hearing me out. I appreciate you talking to me about this, but at the end of the day, we are very much in disagreement on this because, number one, you think that spousal discipline is okay. I think that is completely, utterly wrong.
I didn't say that it was okay. I just don't think it crosses a line for
and then also, you are saying that my dad, if he claimed he never hit his wife to his church members, that would be okay. So we clearly are very much in disagreement on this topic, and you can hold whatever opinion you want. That's cool, that's great. But I know what I witnessed, and I, unlike you, have done due diligence into figuring out what my dad has told his church people. And my dad, according to the witness of everyone I've heard, everyone I've separately talked to, has told the same story, has given the same witness, given the same testimony. The Bible says to believe 2 or 3 witnesses. A lot more than 2 or 3 people have told me that my dad denied every allegation and said he never hit his wife. He was never accused of punching her. That was never an accusation. The accusation was him using corporal punishment with an electrical cord and on a few occasions slapping her. I can give you my siblings' phone numbers. You can call them. You can ask them the tough questions, and you can then make your decision based on those.
What information are they going to tell me, John, that I don't know?
So you're saying you know that he beat his wife with spousal punishment?
I asked him the questions that I needed to ask, and he answered them truthfully, and it doesn't contradict anything you're saying. Again, when I talked with your dad, and I needed to ask the questions for clarification, he said it's not like John's just making stuff up. But
so then why is he telling his church I'm making stuff up?
But again,
that's what I keep hearing from the church members.
He's saying that he felt like you stretched the truth or embellished from his perspective.
His perspective, cool.
Where it became a lie.
Okay, well then let me look at but he told his church that he never hit his wife. Due diligence research, and if you actually research and talk to enough people, you will find out that, number one, every allegation I made against my dad is true, and number two, my dad lied to his congregation.
I'm not, but I think that, here's the thing, I am agreeing with what you just said, and I'm agreeing that when I listened, I could tell he is describing real life situations. But I felt, before I even talked to anybody, these are probably somewhat exaggerated.
He's not saying it's exaggerated. He's saying it's not true and he never hit his wife.
With these facts, they're going to come to different conclusions.
Okay.
Because the whole world, John, thinks that just spanking your kids politely with a paddle is child abuse.
That's not really true.
The vast majority of people in America, like half of America, doesn't even think you should spank, period. And then a large percentage of people think that it's just child abuse to even
but the whole world over agrees that torture is wrong. Like, that's against the Geneva Convention. That's against the Constitution. Sure. And my parents were torturing little kids. Yes, getting beaten with an electrical cord as a way to as a way to get information out of somebody. What would you call that then? What would you call that? What?
I think my kid's trying to get them to tell me what happened.
Okay.
In the situation.
Okay, then sounds torture. Like inflicting pain on somebody. What? Let me look at the dictionary definition of the word torture then. Because what do you call inflicting pain on somebody to get them to admit something if not torture?
It could be argued
torture. Hang on, torture. Noun, definition number 1, the act of inflicting excruciating pain as punishment or revenge as a means of getting a confession or information or for sheer cruelty. By the dictionary definition of torture, did my dad torture little kids? Yes.
I would say no. Still.
You and I are clearly seeing things very differently, and we're going in circles, so this conversation is now getting kind of pointless at this point. I understand. Thank you for talking to me. I understand what you're saying. I hear you. I understand you. And I respect your opinion, but I disagree.
All right? Okay, I don't expect you to agree with me right now, especially. But I just hope that,
I hope there'll be reconciliation as well. I hope there'll be reconciliation as well.
And any reconciliation effort, people have somebody on one side of the equation has to just decide to be the bigger person.
I'll keep that in mind. I will keep that in mind. And I'm willing to be the bigger person, but he is still going to have to apologize for the wrongdoing he did. Right?
I'll say one more thing, John. Here's the thing. Even if you don't want to go to his church, and even if you think he's disqualified as a pastor, I think it's still potentially worth it to just try and tell your parents, look, I probably did do some things wrong. Maybe it was wrong for me to go public, but at the same time, I don't really want to go to your church. I do think you're disqualified, but I want to say I'm sorry and then whatever you would make amends.
I'm not sorry for going public with this stuff, because I gave them the opportunity to. I have, since becoming an adult and realizing that those things were wrong, I have had scores of conversations with my parents, my other siblings as well, and they always refused to change, would not accept wrongdoing. So finally, I went public after a long time. But I appreciate you giving me a call. I appreciate your time. I understand everything you're saying. I'll keep all that in mind. But I'm gonna let you go now. All right? Have a good day, man.
I understand. God bless. I'll pray for you.
All right.
And if you need something, let me know.
All right. Likewise. Talk to you later, Pastor.
Bye.